Brother Ben here. Brother Ben. Now, Ben got a heck of a program. A lot of people listening to Brother Ben. And Ben tells them about the minister. And Ben tells them about the minister.
All right, so we are rolling. Welcome to the Brother Ben X Show. Today we're going to be interviewing our big brother, Brother Tony X. We're going to hear about his background. Want to talk about your story going to prison.
Yes, sir.
Finding the teachings, and then, your journey coming out. So tell us your name and a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay, my name is Brother Tony X. I was born in Denison, Texas, right outside of Dallas, Texas. I was raised in Oak Cliff. It's a neighborhood in the Dallas area, the Metroplex, called Oak Cliff, Texas. I went to the school of Albert Sidney Johnston. That was my elementary school. My junior high school was Oliver Wendell Holmes, and my high school was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I graduated 2 years late. My mother was a single parent, beautiful woman. She did domestic work. She cleaned houses, took care of white folks, as most of our parents did. She was abused. When she was a child, she was born in San Angelo, Texas. They put her in a trash can, and she survived through that, thank Almighty God Allah. Like I say, my high school, my education, I was raised around drugs, all kinds of marijuana, pills. My neighbors, everybody, bootleg and all of that. That was the environment that I grew up in Roosevelt, in the Oak Cliff, I mean. I graduated 2 years late, and I take pride in my graduating 2 years late, right? I began my drug life at the age of probably about 8, 9, 10, gambling, seeing people smoke weed, drinking beer, all that kind of stuff, right? The typical ren in a neighborhood. I basically raised myself. I didn't have to go to school unless I wanted to go to school. My mother taught me a lot of principles, a lot of things. She told me as a child, if you make a bed, you're gonna sleep in it. She told me a hard head make a soft behind. But I didn't know what those things meant at that time. Fast forward, in 1985, a friend of mine that I grew up with named Zachary Scott, he has a brother named Roddy Scott. They were from Bunton in South Dallas. They used to live in Oak Cliff, and their mother was a drug addict, and she used to shoot heroin. We would go over their house as children and see how indecent the house was and how she was shooting up. That's the type of environment I grew up in. But this little brother, Zeke, we call him Zeke, he moved to South Dallas, and he came back to Oak Cliff with, at that time, the rims were center lines. We were driving Cutlasses, right? And he came back with that and the booming music. That's when they take the whole back seats out, put the Sarah Vegas in the cars. And as he pulled up one day, they had what we call a dookie rope, right? A great big hollow rope with big symbol on it and a lot of money. And I looked at him, I said, man, what you doing, right? He said, man, I'm up, man. I said, what is up? He said, I'm having money now. What are you doing? And he was selling crack cocaine. That's when it exploded, right? That's when the crack came out. So eventually, I started selling a drug called PCP or wet. They call it Gorilla Piss, wet. Those are the nicknames for it. And as I began to sell that, we was working for a guy out of South Dallas by the name of JoJo. He was a pimp, wore a lot of jewelry, Cadillacs and all of that. And that's how I was raised, right? So fast forward, I went to school, I graduated 2 years late, tried and strived to do right, got on probation, stealing cars, average teenager. I saw my father 2 times in my whole life. When I went to federal prison, I found out that my father was a police officer. And that was interesting too, all praise be to Allah. But that's basically it, that's how I grew up. Then I eventually became, I started selling drugs for the Jamaicans.
So hold on. Yes, we're gonna get there. Yes, you talked about growing up in a single household, only seeing your father 2 times.
2 times, yes, sir.
How did that affect you growing up?
That's a good question. Because the first time I saw him, I was living at 1717 Sutherland, right across the street from the Cedar Crest Golf Course. And I was so excited when my mother told me, your daddy coming over here. I'm like, what? I've been thinking about this man my whole life. I was about 9 years old, right? He comes, buy me a 6-pack, and I always wanted to go to Jack in the Box. He took me to Jack in the Box. And then he said, I'll be back tomorrow. And I never saw him again. The second time I saw him, I was 17 years old, right? I was 2 years behind in schooling. And my sister woke me up. We were living on Avenue E, right off 11th Street in Oak Cliff. She comes in the house, she wakes me up, my baby sister. And she said, your daddy outside. And now I'm 17. So this was the time about 9, 8, and I see him again at 17. And I saw him, and I said, he was a well-groomed man, tie, New Yorker, nice clean car, clean cut. And I didn't even speak to him. I said, say, man, I'm hungry, man, right? He said, I'll be back, I'm gonna go cash my check. And I never saw him again, and I'm 55 years old. Now, the way that affected me is I never knew what a man was, right? So I grew up in an environment where it's every man for himself. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I gotta get mine, you gotta get yours. So that's how I grew up, and the way it affected me in a way like, I don't know what a man is. So all I know is abusing women, being a womanizer, selling all the drugs I can, making all the money I can, fight anybody, shoot anybody, didn't make me any difference. So the way it affected me, it handicapped me. But I didn't know I was handicapped, right? And I thank God for him doing what he did. I thank God because I hated my father. I also hated my mother. But Minister Farrakhan made me love my mother and my father and gave me understanding.
Is Brother Ben here? Brother Ben. Now, Ben got a heck of a program. A lot of people listening to Brother Ben. And Ben tells them about the minister. And Ben tells them about the minister.